three beautiful grandsons, James, Levi, and Caleb. I so appreciated what the pastor said about Romans. You know, neither height nor depth, nor principalities, nor life or death, nor things to come shall ever separate us from the love of Christ. I've been a Christian for 26 years, and 22 years ago I led David to the Lord. There is no doubt in my mind that he was a believer because I led him there. He went to church with me a couple of times. In the time that I remember most, they taught on James, I think it was 1:15, where it talked about every good gift comes from the Father of light, where there's no variable or shadow of turning. David was that good gift. I knew him from the time I was 14 and until he was taken. And there was no accident. The Bible says that it is appointed once for man to die and then the judgment. But he escaped the judgment because he was a believer. It's all done with. It's all covered by the blood. Because the Bible says in John 3:16, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth him shall not perish but have everlasting life." And David didn't have the 10-year plan, and he didn't have the 20-year plan, and he didn't have the 50-year plan. David has everlasting life. It took that one time for him to believe, to give his life to Christ. That's all it took. No matter what he did with his life after that, that's all it took. I remember one day Janeree came up to me. She goes, "You know, I'd like to paint my room." I said, "Duh." And she was an excellent, excellent painter. She painted small things, little animals, and I'd go and fire them, and she'd give them to people, to the elderly. Janeree was always reaching out to those who were helpless. And one of her very best friends was a girl that was born with spina bifida, And she ministered to her, and she ministered to people all the time. And I remember her coming up saying that she wanted to paint her room. And so at that time, my husband had left, and I had 3 jobs and going to school. So I said, "Okay, I'll call your dad, and maybe he can come help you this weekend." By the time I'd come home, Janeree moved all the furniture into the middle of her bedroom and painted it a beautiful sea green. And by the time I came home, it was all moved back, all nice, and it was perfect. Janeree couldn't be here. She's in Las Vegas. She has a very, very sick son, James, who was named after her grandpa. So she sent me this. This is called A Man's Accomplishments. How do you speak about a man's life when you hardly knew him? I can count the memories I have of my father and I on one hand. And though they are few, they are good. And though they are simple and seemingly insignificant, they are precious to me and forever embedded in my memory. As you gather this evening to say goodbye to David, I want to share with you one of his great accomplishments. I want to tell you about his daughter, his legacy. Some of you might not know that David had a child who grew up to become a wife and mother to 3 beautiful boys so far. You probably don't know that she was homeschooled and taught about life and God, and that all life comes from God. His daughter grew to know that life is worth saving, from the elderly who are helpless to the unborn who are extremely helpless, and anyone in between in need of protection. She strives to be a godly wife and mother and loves her husband, trusting him with the leadership of their home and family life. She plans to homeschool their own children, ensuring that they learn about God and grow in character and strength, always standing up for what is right and standing against what is wrong. Her desire is that her sons will be hard workers and trustworthy leaders of their own families. If ever blessed with daughters, they will also learn the importance of being godly wives and mothers, and to be keepers of their own homes, raising their children to follow after God. Her desire for a Christ-centered home life is strong, and that is what guides her in the rearing of her children. That is what shows her how to be a submissive wife, following her husband's direction for their family. And when her children are old enough, they will know the truth of their grandfather's passing, that his death was not in vain, but that he he died protecting someone, offering them a safe haven, standing in as an angel sent from God. Their grandfather died a hero. Though David might not be able to be credited for the kind of woman, wife, or mother that his daughter became, he is every much a part of her as her mother is. God chose him before the foundation of the world to be her father. He was set apart from being anyone else's parent, kept especially for her and only her. I thank you all for coming today to pay your respects and bid farewell to my father. I wish I'd known the man he was before circumstances changed, making that difficult to happen. May the good memories you all have of him be cherished, and may God grant you all peace in knowing that even